Music of the Soul Prelude, Chapter 2. What were you thinking? Malik roared. Neil huffed internally as he looked around the room. There were 6 people in the room, not counting himself, standing around a rough-hewn wooden table with ornate wooden chairs that made the room seem almost comically mismatched. The walls were painted pure white, with only a few pictures of flowers to decorate them. There were no windows. This room was where the council sat and discussed issues, and they couldn't risk eavesdroppers. But the room was well lit with an overhead incandescent light that gave such a bright light it made the room seem almost sterile. He swept his gaze across all in the room, finally resting on Malik, who was tall and dark-complected with hard, dark eyes that were ablaze with fury right now. "I was thinking," he said, resting the last word with every ounce of emphasis he could muster. Malik was hard-headed at the best of times, and right now was not the best of times. He hated dealing with stubborn people. That she almost destroyed herself and several other people out there because she touched her own power unguided, and is likely to do it again. She needs guidance to be safe from herself, for others to be safe from her, and we're the only ones that can provide that. What matter to us if she destroys herself? That, unsurprisingly, came from Samuel, a stubborn cast to his tanned, lined face, full of hard angles and dark eyes that furrowed in anger. A streak of white hair began behind each ear, tumbling with his long hair to his shoulders, giving him a dignified look. What care did he have if some fool killed themselves with their own power? "It matters because people saw it, and people could have died," Neil retorted shortly. He really did not like talking to the council. They were too set in their ways and too stubborn about it. "Then we should not alter their memories and make her disappear?" Came the high, musical lilt of Camille, her salt and pepper hair pulled back into a tight bun that he suspected she did to pull all the wrinkles forming on her face to make her appear younger. Compared to everyone else in the room, she could have been mistaken for a child if it weren't for her hair and face. Those who made the mistake of telling her as much found themselves regretting the day they were born. "Since when did we turn to murder?" Eloise said, surprise and anger in her low voice. Though she was typically calm, her blue eyes were now icy, and her furrowed brow reflected the fiery red hair on her head. It took a lot to make Eloise angry, and it seemed somewhere along the line he had done just that. Fortunately for him, once she was once again calm, she would not hold it against him. "It makes sense," Malik claimed, shrugging his broad shoulders. "She is an outsider. We want nothing to do with outsiders. Better to make her disappear than to bring her where she isn't wanted and train her or set her free and have her wreak havoc and give us a bad name." "And what's wrong with training her here?" said Jose. He was one council member Neil liked. He was laid back most of the time and not so stuck in his ways. Neil thought that came in part from the fact that his own family had come to America not too long ago, not knowing what they were, and received mercy from the council back then. "Some of us weren't wanted either, but you took us in and taught us anyway. Why should she be any different?" "Because we have too many as it is," Malik practically screamed. "We are overrun by outsiders." "Overrun? With only a handful who haven't been here more than a generation," Eloise said flatly. Among all the arguing, the only one who sat silently listening with a calm demeanor had been Laufey. Eldest of their home, their society, she stood watching them with a calm eye, the light from the overhead light glistening off her snow-white hair, which was pulled back into a knee-length braid as thick as his wrist. Her mismatched eyes were icy, even when smiling, so many who did not know her thought she was always planning some kind of vengeance. Those who did know her, however, knew that was simply an effect of the color of one of her eyes. She was wise and kind, and not afraid to be stern. Right now, Though her demeanor was calm, her mismatched eyes, one blue, one brown, seemed stern as she took in each person who spoke, responding with still silence, her hands folded in front of her simple white robes, making them somehow seem even more frail. She, however, was far from frail. She had the greatest power among them, and the greatest self-control. "We do not take in outsiders for a reason, Neil," Laufey said finally, her high voice making her sound far younger than her snowy hair and wrinkled face spoke of. "They are often rejected and bullied by those who have been here for generations, and they often question our ways." "Shouldn't they be questioned?" Jose asked. That was a dangerous question indeed, particularly from a council member. Many questioned why he had been placed on the council if he wanted to question the old ways. "They should not," Laufey said sternly, giving him an icy, piercing gaze. "They are for our safety, as you well know." "I know all of that," Neil said impatiently. "But you guys didn't see what I saw. Laufey, she could be a match for you when she learns to control herself, and she hasn't even reached her full potential." That brought silence to the room and hard stares. No one could match Laufey, and many had mumbled that it was a sign that they were a dying breed. Some gave him dubious glances, wondering if he might be lying or crazy. The others gave him a stern look, but he could tell that their focus was not on him, but in their own thoughts. "You are certain?" Laufey asked, and though her voice was steady and calm, her face as serene as almost always, he could tell he had struck a chord. "I am," he told her. "This is impossible!" Malik cried. "No one can match the eldest. Certainly not this outlander with no self-control." "Her self-control is better than you think, Malik. True, it almost took her and she looked ready to let it. But at the last moment she wrenched control for herself and stopped what she had started." "Tell us what you saw, Neil," Camille said, still looking as though she did not believe him, and willing to make him prove himself a liar in front of all of them. Neil began explaining what he had seen, the strong whirlwinds that kicked up, the water separating and spinning below her, the vines holding on to her feet, her voice changing, all of it. The more he spoke, the less dubious they seemed, and the more their eyebrows rose. "I still say it is impossible," Malik grumbled, crossing his dark, toned arms across his chest. "Well, it's what I saw," Neil said impatiently. "She could be the one," Camille muttered, more to herself, her dark eyebrows furrowed in concentration and thought. "She could be," Laufey said, though she sounded distant, deep in thought. "In that case, we must all be prepared for what is coming." "You can't tell me you're all surprised," Eloise spoke up finally. "The solar eclipse is coming in just a few months." "That doesn't make it the end of the world," Samuel said flatly. "There have been eclipses before where nothing happened." "You know the signs and have seen them," Jose said patiently. He seemed surprised that Samuel would deny what was becoming obvious. For the last 3 years, summer had come early and left late. Winters, though shorter than they should be, were more severe. Spring and autumn were nearly non-existent because summer came so fast and lingered nearly into winter. While the plants loved the prolonged warm weather, the people became grumpier with it, and the political climate was in turmoil. Well, not many would know what the political climate outside of their society was like. No one cared about the outside world, aside from medicine and technological advancements that they used. But a few such as Jose liked to keep current on the outside world. Those were usually shunned by their peers for being strange, more like an outsider than one of them. "That doesn't change anything," Samuel retorted, waving a wrinkly, dismissive hand. "Seasons change drastically sometimes. We all know about El Niño and La Niña, and the environment acts accordingly." "We can discuss later whether or not we agree the legend is coming true," Laufey said, but with little heat. She seemed distracted, which was completely unlike her. "For now, I am of the mind to train this girl. If she really is as strong as Neil claims, I would rather not have her out in the world unguided and a danger to everyone around her, including us." That truly left everyone in the room stunned, including Neil. He had come in, summoned really, expecting to be told that the girl he had brought with him would have to be kicked out or silenced, and that he himself would be facing a very stern penance for disobeying their laws. He might still have to do so, but he was willing to pay the price if it meant that she could receive training. Laufey could be kind and motherly when she wanted to, but she had little mercy for those who broke such serious laws, and while she was more flexible than some of the other council members, she still firmly believed that outsiders should not be welcomed. "Camille, you will find the girl a room with one of the newer students. She will need a guide and a friend in her training," Laufey ordered. Camille's brow furrowed even more, this time in anger. She did not like being told how to do her job as disciplinarian and counselor for the students. "Neil, since you brought her here, you will be in charge of her training. She is your responsibility now. What time you do not spend training her, you can spend fasting and meditation on the crime you have committed. You will also submit yourself to Malik for a public birching." Neil cringed so hard inwardly that he could not hide it outwardly this time. He and Malik never really got along well, though they weren't outright enemies, and he knew Malik would hate him for breaking their laws. He was already known for being merciless with his punishments, but he would be extra hard on Neil now. He didn't mind the fasting and meditation so much, though he disliked being hungry and had a hard time sitting still most days. But a public birching would be both physically and emotionally mortifying. Oh yes, he had certainly gotten on Laufey's bad side now. He just hoped this girl was what he thought she was, for all of their sakes. He cringed even more when he saw the slight smile on Malik's face.